Welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. I'm Miff Galloway, a performance coach passionate about supporting ambitious and high-performing women just like you who know they have untapped potential just waiting to be unleashed. If you're looking to massively up-level your performance in all areas of life, you've come to the right place. My goal on this podcast is to take you beneath the surface so you can connect with yourself on a deeper level while providing you with valuable insights and the tools necessary to navigate life's challenges and go after your goals with strength, clarity, and wisdom. If you're ready to uncover the truth which lies underneath so you can recognize your powerful feminine leadership style, pursue your goals unapologetically, and thrive in every aspect of your life, hit the follow button and get ready to explore the incredible possibilities that lie within you. Together, we'll uncover your next steps in achieving peak performance, because actually, you can. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Actually You Can podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Jess Dickson, who's a no BS strength, health, and resilience coach who's all about helping women get strong, build muscle, and level up their mindset. In this episode, we're going to cut through the noise and talk about the reality of bouncing back postpartum. Because let's be honest, it's not as simple as snapping back into shape, nor should it be. So we're going to dive into the real talk on what it actually looks like to regain your fitness and body composition postpartum. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jess. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. And by the way, your podcast voice is so professional. Goals. I was like, oh, this lady.
You're good for my ego, Jess. Love it already. So let's just jump straight to it. After having a baby, I know for a lot of women, and myself included, there's like this sort of race and pressure to snap back, and I'm doing like these air quotes for listeners here. Why do you think we have this obsession with bouncing back, and how do you think this expectation really impacts women postpartum?
I would say the expectation that it's like deeply rooted into like human history in terms of people want to look good, and people are also attracted to people who they're attracted to. So I think in terms of bouncing back, it's like when women are like weren't meant to talk, they were just meant to be. Like they were just meant, serve their husband, to be the person that comes home and all dinner's ready and always look amazing. I think that hasn't really stopped as we sort of progress as humans. And I guess the notion of bouncing back is just a continued pressure to look a certain way. Like they call it at the moment in this day and age called pretty privilege, where if you don't look a certain way, you're not accepted. And that goes across like all cultures. And that's just not like your white women being like, lean and jacked. Like when you look at women who are on from other cultures where being bigger is actually, to be applauded and things like that. And if they don't, adhere to those particular goals, it changes. So in terms of, I guess, the pressure and wanting to bounce back is because we are now probably more exposed to a lot more people in the world through social media. And we see these people who have probably the most amazing genetics and have had a blissful pregnancy, and they haven't had too much adversity for them to come back and be like, okay, well, my body's just done what it's needed to do. I haven't gained that much weight. I haven't, got all these stretch marks, and you should look like me postpartum. So I think there's also that notion of being like, we can't win. And people are also then like, when you look at like postpartum women, we are depressed as fuck. It's just like we're getting no sleep. We've just like our body has completely changed. We have crazy emotions, and we're looking back on ourselves being like, why am I not this person now? So I guess it's an accumulation of so many things. It's not just one, but I think a long list that I'll probably be here for a long time discussing.
Yeah. And I mean, to give the listeners a bit of context, you're a mum, you have a beautiful daughter. How old is Rose now?
Oh, 2.5. I don't know. I stopped counting months. I just years now.
Yeah, literally. I think when they hit 2, you don't talk in months anymore. It's years. It's just weird otherwise. But so for the context for listeners, what what level of fitness and what did your body comp look like before Rose?
Mm,
And what was the reality of your postpartum
mm, mm.
body and
Good,
fitness?
good question. It's probably a lot different to what I ever thought it would be. So I went through a pretty long period of being quote unquote infertile from contraception, and then to gain back my cycle from long-term contraception use and being at such a low body fat percentage for a while wasn't the best situation to make a baby. So the body was like, no. For me to actually gain back my period or gain back my cycle, it ended up me having to completely stop training for about 12 months. And then in that time, increasing calories, and I gained about 20 kilos in about 6 months or so, 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So my starting position was well not to what I was used to. Like my
Yeah.
body was not conditioned. My hormonal health came back, but I would say my internal health, like my skin was terrible. All these things weren't ideal. So for me going into pregnancy, I was about 82 kilos or so, and most of it was body fat. Like I'd lost a majority of my muscle. Now, thankfully, the history that I'd had with terms of training and understanding nutrition, I was actually able to then start training whilst being pregnant. So I went from not training to actually training from pregnancy. I know that's very
Yeah.
different for women. We're saying, hey,
Yeah.
if when you're pregnant, don't start something new, like which you
Yeah.
shouldn't, unless someone has advised you that has the qualifications to do so. To be like, hey, maybe we should do X, Y, and Z. So I went back into training, and I was actually able to start seeing some body composition changes in the fact that I was getting a little bit more muscle mass. Like I was still obviously, growing a human, but my weight didn't change too much throughout my whole pregnancy. I think I gained maybe 4 kilos in the whole time frame. So I was like 84 but that's because I put some extra work in whilst being pregnant. And thankfully I had a very low risk pregnancy. The first 12 weeks, as most people know, you're not really doing too much, but post then I was like, I can do at least 2 sessions a week and nothing too crazy, just to move, be on an assault bike for a period of time, just low impact stuff. And that really helped, I think, getting my body into a better position for postpartum. So pregnancy, stronger legs, stronger core, stronger mind. And then postpartum, I wasn't holding as much extra fluid because I was doing a lot of these things, which I think then also helped the recovery process, which by the way wasn't amazing. Like any new mums out there, you'll all know, like nothing fucking prepares you for that.
Oh, no, I'm just
Yeah.
my experience is only 3 months ago, and I was like, why didn't anyone tell me about this? But I was like, no one can
No,
tell
no,
you about
no.
this because everyone's experience is different, right?
100%. 100%. And I guess that's probably a really good thing to notice. Everyone's experience is different. And I'm not a huge advocate for looking at someone's pregnancy and being like, this is the way that it should be, or birth story, or postpartum, because everyone's different. Everyone has different genetics. And then also your level of adversity in your life and what you've actually exposed yourself to will determine how you come out of it postpartum. So I find a lot of women who have lived, and don't take this the wrong way, but like a comfortable life where you've gone to work 9 to 5, there's no adversity, nothing too crazy. And then all of a sudden there is all these things happening. And you're like, actually, I don't know how to deal with any of this. Well, coming from, I guess, and I'm not sure about yourself, but my perspective being hustling from I was like 14, always having 2 or 3 jobs, then owning an own business. Like adversity was my everyday goddamn life. And then if I'm honest, postpartum was like an emotional roller coaster, but like a physical breeze. I was like, I could just lie down. Like I'm not sleeping, but I can lie the fuck down. So I guess, but that's my journey. And I guess then that's probably a good thing to notice. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
Like I could have completely had a different approach to postpartum, but I truly believe that my history led to my postpartum journey.
Yeah, and we could do a whole episode on prepping for pregnancy from like a
Oh
health and
yeah.
fitness standpoint. Like I think, yeah, literally I
Mm,
likened it because prior to being pregnant myself, I like doing Olympic lifting and doing various stuff,
mm,
which
mm.
some people continue during pregnancy, but I changed my goals as soon as I found out that I was pregnant and was like, I'm training for the biggest fucking event of my life, and that is to give birth.
Yes,
Like that is the
yes.
biggest physical event I'll do. And that mindset was so helpful for me during pregnancy because I didn't put the expectations to perform a certain way, which I'm sure you can resonate with when you have a
100%.
particular background. You're like, I can't fucking do X, Y, Z. Well, it's like you're growing a human. Sorry.
Yeah,
Like I'm being very blunt
obviously.
here. Yeah. But your priorities change. It's not about you at the moment in the most respectful way possible. Like you're growing a human and you need to do whatever
Very much so.
it takes to do that. And so looking at the postpartum aspect of it, I think, do
Hmm.
you think there's particular people who are more susceptible to feel that pressure to bounce back than others? Do you think
Mm,
there's a particular segment of women? And if so, what are those potential risk factors?
mm. It's a good question, and I guess I think a lot of people have that pressure, particularly if they've looked for external validation, like if
Mm,
they're in the public eye a lot, and then all of a sudden they're getting criticism because they're not thin. Like that lady that
mm.
was on the Biggest Loser, Tiffany Hall.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
she got blasted for putting on weight
Yeah.
in pregnancy. Like that is a horrendous approach
Yeah.
to I guess to women, and when you look, and that's why people love her now, is because she was so real, because she wasn't the fast, quick back person. And I
Mm,
think when you're in the limelight, there's always going to be pressure. So if you're a person
mm,
that's built your brand and built your business on social media, or your career is based on how you look, then there's going to be positives and negatives there. But then I also think where if you're just a person that's living your normal life, and then all of a sudden you don't have the body that you used to have, and it's completely changed. And I've seen women who have bodies completely shifted.
mm,
That's a really hard thing to process in your brain, because you're looking at yourself in the mirror and it's like, what the hell? Like, now I
mm,
have all this skin, I
mm,
have stretch marks that weren't there before. Like, how do I, like, this is an immediate change. Like, most change
mm,
takes a little longer to happen. This is like bam, smack done. It's like, well, how do I love this new person?
mm,
These are all the things that I've been told not to have: to not have a belly, to not have stretch marks, to not have a cellulite. How do I then accept all of this? So I think I don't think it discriminates. I think it goes across a lot of people.
mm,
Um, I do think it is starting to shift, and it's becoming more accepted that, like, hey, you've
mm,
pushed out a human, like, and you've grown bones, like, you deserve to have some scars. Um, but I don't think it discriminates. I think a lot of women feel
mm.
that, and then that's when obviously the deep inner self work comes, and understanding, like, who you are and what do you value as a person for yourself. Is it just the way that you look, or is it an accumulation of
Mm.
things?
And that's what I really love about your approach to health and fitness is you do care about the human, like you care about the
Mm,
mindset and the beliefs that are driving
mm,
and motivating particular
mm,
individuals. And what I'm thinking of, like when you're talking to that particular experience, it's like we're pregnant for 9 months, then we give birth, then suddenly we're not pregnant anymore, and then we're
mhm,
like,
mhm.
who the fuck are we now? Like we were a pregnant person,
I
now we're
still
a
don't
mum, and
know.
yeah, like what? Yeah, what the fuck does that even look like? And so it's like we've got to build this new identity while having another human, like another identity that
Yeah.
is fully dependent on us. It's kind of like
Mm,
we're rediscovering ourselves. And so it's sort of like we reached for old labels, go, cool, what can I control in this moment? Or what
mm,
was familiar to me that I can get back?
mm,
Because I'm keen to hear your thoughts on the language.
mm,
The term bouncing back. I mean,
mm,
the first thing that comes to mind when I hear that, I'm like, why the fuck do we want to go back to the old? When we
mhm.
can create something new. What's your interpretation of that? Bouncing back.
I despise the phrase bouncing back, because you can't go back. You can't go backwards. You're
Mm,
not that person anymore. You won't have that same body. Like, some women might look the same, but internally, like, it might be slightly different. But also, going back is it's not growing. If you're going backwards, you're not growing.
mm,
You're not going forward.
yeah.
And the expectation of going back to what you were is, like you're saying, that, like, what you currently are isn't great as well. And I think that's a really big
Mm,
thing women need to start to work with, is like, you are perfect in all forms. If you feel that your body is not, it doesn't look or feel the way that you want it to feel, then acknowledge
mm,
that, but don't beat yourself up about it. It's like, hey, this is my current situation is. The steps I need to get there are going to be X, Y, and Z. It's going to be a long slog, but accepting
mm,
that, one, your looks don't define you, and if they do, then one, you need to probably work on that mindset. But also, it all comes down to, like, what you accept is going to be acceptable for you. So if you're not accepting yourself of your
mm,
new person, you're not accepting others either. Like you might say you're amazing, you look like this. It's like, well, you're actually your world perception is like what you see. So then you're putting your opinions and emotions onto the world. So if you're not liking the way that you're feeling, then you need to change those opinions and perceptions of yourself and then obviously of other people. So I do strongly believe that when you look at the connotation of bouncing back, it's like, okay, you got to let that lady pass. Like she's gone. I got the best piece of advice from a lady. It's like, that person you were before Rose is dead. So stop trying to be that person because she's never going to come back. You now have someone to look after. You are now no longer the only priority. You now have to look after yourself and your child's self. And then for me, they model us. Like they model their parents.
Yeah.
So if myself saying those things to myself, how I always picture what's Rose going to say or say back to me if I was to say that, or how is what I'm doing going to affect her, because it is going to completely affect her. And obviously being a girl, now I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but when it comes to bouncing back, I don't think it's an appropriate way to look at things. I think it's what's my current status right now. What are the measurables that I need to track and measure? And then how do I make a plan to adjust it or move forward?
Yeah.
Like I flipping hated being, and I'll be honest, I hated being heavier. I hated having as much body fat as I did before pregnancy and then during pregnancy and then after. Because to me, I feel inflamed. My digestion's terrible. I just don't feel like a good functioning human with that much body fat. Now, if I did, fantastic. I wouldn't care how much body fat I've got, but it just wasn't. And oh my God, I got so much knee pain. My God, my joints were not prepared for that. Oh my God. And then for me to then, I guess, improve my physique to one, to be less body fat, and to do was one, because it's my job. I want to be able to look the part. And two, I really like looking a certain way.
Yep.
I will never look the same way that I did before. Like there's no way my stomach's going to look anywhere near what it did before. But I know that that's going to take a really long time, and I'm not pressuring myself to do so. It's like I'm only sort of feeling myself 2.5 years later after having Rose. And that's my version of what I want to be, not anyone else's. Like I'm not looking at people on Instagram and be like, I wish I had your legs. One, because why? You're you, be all you. For me, I want my glutes to be amazing, but I want my shoulders to be amazing. They're my two biggest things. I don't care about anything else. But that's my particular goals. So I'm just like working on that. But I'm not looking back. I'm not being like, okay, this is who I was in the past. It's like, because it's not gonna do any benefit unless it fires you up. I mean, like, I'm gonna be better than her.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was really long-winded.
No, I was going to say there is so much I would love to unpack there. But firstly, I want to say thank you for saying that you like yourself to look a certain way. Fuck, I wish more people would be honest about themselves about that.
Yeah.
It's okay to train for looks if that's what motivates you.
Yeah.
Like just be honest
100%.
about it. Like just go, I feel my best when I look a certain way. Like for
Yeah.
me personally, it's a feeling. I want to feel fit and strong,
Yeah,
and I
100%.
know what that is, and my body looks a particular way as a result of that. For some people, they go, I want fucking boulder shoulders or a big ass. Great, then train for that. Like just be honest with yourself about why you're training. Yeah,
and that's the exact conversation I have with my clients when I start them up, because my goals aren't their goals, not so ever. And then I always like to make sure they don't look at me as inspiration. I want them to look at my actions as inspiration, not necessarily my physique as inspiration. Because like I look at High Rocks chicks and I'm like, oh my God, you are so fit. Your quads are like beautiful, but it's not what I want. Like I don't want to go around a circuit and drag a sled and then do 1 million burpees and then do lots of lunges. To me, that sounds like fucking terrible. I would much rather be a boring batshit girl that just does lateral raises in the gym. Like I can completely admire other physiques. And then I also admire a lady who might be, let's say my physique before I was pregnant, doing marathons. Like there is no like, and I guess that's why people, there's always this be a certain way, be a certain image. Like this fitness isn't a look. Health isn't a look. It's like what makes you feel good and makes you feel confident is what you should be striving for, not for what someone else wants. you to look, or from what you think you should look like, because at the end of the day, you got to look after, like, you have to talk to yourself, and and you're listening to what you're saying to yourself. So you got to be like open and honest with yourself. If you want something, do you actually want it? And if you do, then go for it. Who cares what anyone else thinks?
And I'm not sure if listeners picked up on it, but neither of us mentioned weight goals, because we know that our weight will whatever happens to our weight will be a byproduct of training for what we want, whether it's the style that we like doing, the outcome that we want. Our weight just happens, whatever it is, and you kind of need to be happy with that. Like, I'm supporting someone to develop a whole foods program, because that's a goal for me at the moment. Is I've always been interested in whole foods and eating more of that, but I don't want to troll through hours of info on the internet. So hiring a coach, anyone who's in the same boat,
Also,
who just don't
a
want,
lot of
hire a coach.
misinformation.
Oh fuck, yeah,
Like the amount of stuff you see on social, it's like what's going to be like the best approach. It's like there's about 5 different opinions with regards to that. So it's like, okay, well, so that's why you get a coach. You just hone in on one person, and if their approach works, fantastic. And when it doesn't, then you've learned something, and then I guess you move on to another thing. But yeah, weight's a funny one, and a lot of women still will feel attached to it. One, because it's 40, 50 years currently of passed down trauma and like being a certain scale weight. But for me, it's body fat percentage. Like, I find from a statistical perspective, in terms of organ health, like stress on the body, anything above sort of 35, we kind of want to manage. Now, that
and just
doesn't
for listeners too, I'll just jump in here. For listeners, we're not talking about BMI. That's a different thing. Like, we're not talking about the BMI scale.
BMI
We're
and
talking
body
about
fat percentage is very different. Yeah,
100%.
very,
Just
very
want to
different.
make sure listeners know that, because I have my own thoughts on BMI.
Yeah, I don't go down the BMI route. I go off body fat percentage more than, and that's hard. Like a DEXA scan is probably your best way to approach that, as is more than anything else. But I find if we're measuring off, and this is for me as a health coach, for like health reasons, anything above 35, we start to go down the route of like diabetes, obesity, joint health, or anything else. Like anything above that, like I want to try and bring my women underneath that. I don't care about the scales. I know they care about the scales, but we look at other things. But rarely do I reward scale weight loss. Like, I might show it on my stories, because unfortunately that's what people show, but I'll show the psychological wins with the scale weight, and be like, these psychological wins result in this person having reduced body fat percentage. Because I guess being postpartum, like wrapping that back around, is like your body doesn't get back to quote unquote normal until 2 years postpartum, particularly your brain. So focusing, and I get women in my DMs who are 11 weeks postpartum, like it's probably sooner, looking to get back into shape. And I'm like, babe, give yourself time. Your organs aren't even normal yet. And I guess that's probably, to bring it back around, is this, and to get get your body back quick or bounce back, is like women who are newly postpartum. Like, for me, new postpartum is anything below 6 months. Trying to get your body back below 6 months, we have a values issue there. Like, where we want to look at, okay, your organs aren't actually back to where they should be just yet. Your uterus probably hasn't even come back to the same size yet. And then for you to then place that physical and then mental pressure on you, particularly if you haven't trained through pregnancy, or you haven't trained, exercise is fine, but train through pregnancy, it's a really bad thing to get into. And your hormones aren't better. You're still trying to figure out a routine, which there won't be one for a long time. I guess the expectation of bouncing back is probably too hard. And what I would probably suggest for women is like, what are some habits and rituals that I can start to implement now that are going to help my health in future? And then work towards those, rather than worrying about your lower belly pooch, or like, I don't know, anything to do with the way that you look. Anything before that, let's focus on habit creation. And then what happens when stuff doesn't happen, because the baby is going to get in your way a lot of the time. So then when this happens, we don't just throw our hands and stop. It's like, okay, adversity. Okay, next time I'm going to shorten the session, or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and accommodate, don't eliminate.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Accommodate, don't eliminate. I think you touched on a good point too, because similar to yourself, I have a long history of training. So I went into pregnancy feeling confident that I could train. I wanted to use it as a learning opportunity as well. So I hired a coach who specialized in
Hmm.
it. I'm like, cool, let's
Fantastic.
learn through example, right? And so when I gave birth and it was a vaginal birth, I was like, okay, I'll follow a training program back. I couldn't wait to get back into sort of a routine. And then I actually, because I knew I was going to be like, I want to throw a barbell around like ASAP, but like logically, no, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I got the nurses. I didn't want to see it because, you know, when you give birth, you just is going a whole bunch of things. But they're like, do you want to see the placenta? And I was like, no, but can you take a photo of it for me? Because I want to see what fucking got ripped out of my stomach every time I want to jump back into fucking barbell work in 2 weeks' time. I want to see what got ripped out of my stomach as a reminder of what the fuck just happened to my body, and because it's a huge wound, like it's the size of a fucking dinner plate, like
Oh,
that got ripped out of your belly, and just because it's a wound that you can't see, we suddenly go, oh, I've given birth, like I'm fine, honey, you're not
100%.
fine.
No.
Have you?
Like, I didn't
Yeah,
do anything well, I did light movements.
yeah,
Like, I similar thing, I did a postpartum, and it was, like, from 1 week onwards, postpartum
yep,
post 1 week to week 6, and this is for vaginal birth, women, I should say.
yep.
And it was just simple movements, and I found them
Yeah.
hard, and I was probably being a
Yes.
little bit more softer on myself. If I felt something weird, I just stopped. I was like,
Yep.
stop." And it was so simple things, but, like, not simple. It was, like, sitting onto a chair with, like,
Yep.
one leg, and then, like, doing just lower ab stuff, just really slowly, nothing too crazy, and then simple upper body stuff. And I didn't
Mm.
do anything crazy until I saw a pelvic floor physio. Like, I didn't go to the hospital one. Paid the extra money to go and
Yeah.
see someone who is, I wouldn't say is slightly more qualified, but, like, that's like, they tell you more. Like, obviously
Yeah.
you're paying a little bit more, so they're telling you more things, and they do more things like internal exams, external exams, like, what is your
Yeah.
pelvic floor doing? How strong is it? And, like, I thought I was feeling pretty good until I went to the lady, and she was like,
Yeah.
actually, like, your pelvic floor is pretty good, but we can't hold it for X amount of
Yeah.
time frame. We can't do this. And, like, I had a little bit of ab separation, which, if I'm honest, I'm pretty sure I had prior to pregnancy,
Yep.
but she said I did. And I was like, I'll just, you're the expert. I'll do what you
That's good.
say. And she was probably on the more cautious side, which is totally
Mm.
fine. And then I started to include some things, but it wasn't until I saw someone to examine me internally that I
Yeah.
was like, okay, now I feel more confident. Like, once again, I've probably, yeah, even women even sooner than, like, have you been to a women's health physio to see what's actually happening inside?
100%.
Oh no, I feel fine. You might feel fine, but you don't know what's happening down there. Like, you're not putting your finger in there and being like, can this muscle expand and contract? And if it can't, then why are you loading it?
Yeah, it's like it's common for women to like pee themselves when they sneeze or something like that. It doesn't need to be that way. That's not a byproduct of being pregnant. Like,
Okay.
holy crap.
If we have mums that, like, let's say 12 months postpartum,
Yep.
can't sneeze or cough without
Yeah.
needing to pee, you need to sort that shit out now,
Yeah.
because that is
100%.
going to
Like,
that is going to regress tenfold. Give yourself
yep.
10 years, fix it. And I coach women in the gym who their kids were 4 and they couldn't skip. And to me, I'm like, no, like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not putting a 100-kilo bar on your back or an 80-kilo bar on your back if you can't goddamn skip.
No.
Like, I'm sorry, there is a
Yeah.
mismatch. Like, your legs might be strong, but we can't support that. And unfortunately, that can lead to things like prolapse, like
Yeah.
10 years down the track, 15 years down the track, because you haven't spent that time, because it's a muscle. Don't use it. It's going to do what it does and break. What doesn't break? But
Yeah.
biggest piece of advice, and it's not just Kegels, by the way,
Yeah.
please make sure your pelvic floor is where it should be, because that's going
Yeah.
to be the limiting factor to you progressing, and also when you're 50 and you don't want to wear a diaper. So trust me.
That was
I
a
I will
great
be
mental
upfront and
image that I
honest with
just
all
had.
this stuff. Pardon?
I had a great mental image from that.
Yeah,
Just me
you're
50 wearing a
welcome.
diaper, be like, that shit's
Yeah.
not happening.
Get people to do it.
It really sounds like the key is patience, and not a lot of people want to be patient with
100%.
this sort of shit. I think for a lot of women, And again, everyone's different, but they go, I've spent 9 months being pregnant. I finally feel like myself, or like I've got my body back. Fuck, I hate that term as
Mm.
well. I got my body back. Mate, you never lost
Mhm.
it. And sorry,
Mhm.
I'm being very blunt here. I mean it very respectfully because I care about you. I want I want you guys to move forward.
Yeah,
But I think it was always yours. It's just doing different things at this point in time. So
100%.
it's like, how can you take care of it in this moment? And I completely agree. I would love to actually understand statistics of how many women see a women's health physio postpartum,
Mm.
because that's probably one of
Mm.
the most in, important things you can do.
I'd probably take it a step further and how many women go to external health physios? Because well, I could be completely wrong,
Yeah.
but the hospital that I went to, I'm pretty sure they didn't do internal exams. So I
Yeah.
would want
Okay.
to see out of all of the women, how many go. And I know it's probably different as well for women who have cesareans. Like they still have a
Yeah.
pelvic floor, they still have had pressure on that pelvic floor. So, but the degree of needing to see one may be slightly different. Um, but an internal exam, I know it sounds like very uncomfortable, but also you kind of just
Gave
birth
birth.
something with it's like this is fine. This is a walk in a park. Um, but that would be a very cool statistic. And I guess for me, and mind you, I did a safe return to exercise course
Yeah.
well before I was
Yeah.
pregnant,
Awesome.
and I really understood, what would happen in sort of postpartum, particularly around the stomach coming back together, making
Yeah.
sure when it comes to training, the stomach and the core are the priority things you should be looking
Yeah.
after before we look after anything else. Like if you have ab separation, if the pelvic floor isn't doing what it should do, then they need to be addressed first and foremost.
Yeah.
And you can do that at the very start of your pregnancy. Like you're lying down with Bub's on your
Mm.
shoulder, on your lap, or wherever it is, and you can just be doing those pelvic floor exercises.
Yeah.
Or it might be lower core. Like my pelvic floor physio gave me like ab exercises and crunches, like not full crunches, but just like little ones to help the top
Yeah.
abs. And a lot of
Yep.
things I would never have thought of that I
Yep.
did whilst Rose, whilst Rose is like napping on my chest. Like we drove around Australia. Oh, we went to Uluru, from Brisbane to Uluru, which is in the middle of Australia for those who don't listen to us in
Mm.
Australia. I think it was August we left, and she was born in July, so it was a month
Oh,
postpartum. We did a road trip. Yeah, I know. It's the easiest time to travel
yeah.
because all they do is sleep.
Yeah.
Like, it was amazing. But driving down, and I wasn't doing anything. I would consistently do my exercises.
Yeah.
Whenever I got to the Airbnbs or the hotels, I would do my ab exercises because I know that if I didn't, the ramifications would be greater than I would like to admit. And I had the time. Like,
Mm.
they're very simple and very small. They're just tedious and boring.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's tedious and boring, and a lot of people
Yeah.
aren't prepared to do that. But I think, I'm not sure about you, but for the first 4 weeks of my postpartum, I was literally doing breathing and those ab exercises, like first 4 weeks, and it didn't
Yeah.
take long. It was 10 to 15 minutes. And part of me was actually relieved that that was my training, because your life has just
Mm,
been thrown on its head. You've got little bub that I
100%.
mean, everyone's, and just if I put the pressure on myself to do a 45 an hour workout in my fucking home gym, I would have been like, oh my God, that's something else. I'm not sleeping. I've got to look after
Yep.
bub. That would just be
Mhm.
something else to add to my plate. And so it's
Yeah.
almost like, take the
And it's
expectation
all
off you to do that too.
100%. And, like, I guess, like, if you're also breastfeeding,
Mm.
we still have relaxin in us. We still have a lot of things happening into us. And for us to load anything, like, it blows my mind that women wanna load. Well, everyone's different. Like, if you're Tia Toomey, who's, like, the fittest woman on earth, she's an exception to the rule. Huge
Yeah.
exception to the rule. Um because she had obviously a very good birth, was able to get back to
Yeah.
it quite quickly. I don't know what a pelvic floor looks like, but I'm sure it looks fine. But when it took me, when I started going back into the gym at 6 weeks, I was so cautious. Probably because I'm probably
Mm.
more overcautious in my brain than anything,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to break anything. I knew my core wasn't ready to do
Yeah.
things,
Mhm.
so everything was machine based. Nothing really involved me having external stability, so no squats, definitely no lunges. I
Mm.
did RDLs, which is
Yep.
the
Yep.
Romanian deadlifts, because I was comfortable, but not too much load, just to get a little bit of a pump on, and then progress those movements. And I didn't and walked a lot, because you want to get the fluids out, you want to make sure that the body is moving well. I probably walked lots of steps in that time frame, and then it wasn't until probably 6 to 8 weeks postpartum that I maybe trained once a week, twice a week in the gym. And then we had thankfully a gym in our like complex that we were
Yeah.
living in. and I could just take Rose there and she would just lie down on a little mat there while I just did some cable machines and stuff. So very, very, like, I probably didn't start training 3 or 4 days a week until 12 months postpartum, until she was 1.
Yeah.
So mind you, there was a lot of other things, but like I was not sort of felt comfortable. I was like, okay, I'm sweet. I can do this now.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a good point there. Like, postpartum exercise doesn't have to, I mean, it can for some people, but if you're someone who's used to lifting heavy weights or doing bodybuilding style training, postpartum fitness doesn't need to look like mums and bubs yoga or Pilates classes. Like, no offense, that would
No,
be
no,
boring
it
as
does not.
hell.
And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that
Yeah.
at all. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I won't go into that. That's my opinion of mums and bubs. Well, because I had a mums and bubs class,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of, and I don't want to go in this route, but I think when it comes to those classes, one, it's community. It's a fantastic opportunity for you to connect with other
100%.
mothers. But I do think that they don't, it's just group fitness in general. Nothing is tailored to the individual. So
Yes.
there can be mums that are 12 months postpartum and they should be able to load and they should be able to get a stimulus in X, Y, and Z. And there are new mums that are doing stuff on bands. And I think really good group fitness classes need to have an understanding that they have different types of people and to be able to be like skilled enough to be able to coach different types of people. But it doesn't have to be just your mums and bubs classes. Like, find something that still vibes with you and then
Yeah.
see how you can work it into your schedule.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I don't want to put the fear of God into people who are like, I want to do a mums and bubs class, but you can't just assume that it's going to be the right class for you. Like, that's where it goes,
Exactly.
cool. Have your assessment with
Yeah,
the
if you've never
professional. Like,
trained before,
yeah.
never trained before, never done, or if you're very, very cautious about getting back into training, it is a perfect opportunity. Perfect opportunity. And it's a great way to meet other mums that are in a similar
Yeah.
position. Like a very, very good, with ours, they now catch up often. Like they really, really felt quite, but I had like mums that had a breeze pregnancy, a breeze postpartum, and they could start adding load at 6 months postpartum. And then I had another mum who couldn't, and her pelvic floor was terrible, and her abs weren't even there yet. So and that's my version of group fitness. But don't look at Kate because you're now a mum. You fit only mums and bubs classes.
Yeah. And I liked how you talked about community because that's something that I've always considered myself like an individual, a solo athlete. That's sort of my jam.
I
I
feel
had
you.
no freaking, I had no freaking like idea of how powerful it is to have a bunch of fucking rock star women and community around you, like postpartum. And
Oh,
I'm interested to hear who is part of your village. You mentioned like you had in terms of like professionals, but also people who supported you in this journey. You mentioned you had the physio. What else did your sort of village look like?
if I'm honest, I don't really have a village or didn't have a village. But so I had the physio. I had another mum friend that her kid was only like slightly older than Rose, but I had my gym. So I ran an all-female gym then. So anytime I brought Rose in there, like they were like my little village people, but it was only if I went there, they kind of helped me out and did all these things. But in terms of like helping me with everything else, like mum wasn't close.
Yeah.
I've only got brothers. Dylan currently doesn't have here, so I put in terms of like, and we had our friend Felicity here as well, so she was helping us quite a lot, or at least helping with cuddles and stuff while I was able to do some things. But in terms of like, having people cook for you and come over and do like, there wasn't none of that. And so in terms of like, I was so thankful to have the gym there with the girls there because they all made you feel really good and they were all like real women. They weren't like the go hard, go home type women who you might find in things like your rebels and your F45s and that kind of stuff. These were just like middle-aged women wanting to just be strong and healthier. And I loved having Rose there, which I was very thankful for because I was able to then go and take her to the gym and coach them in a session while she's there, or I can train while she's there and that kind of stuff. So that was very beneficial. But a lot of mums don't even have that. Like, if I'm honest, a lot of the mums that I met, like obviously postpartum, because obviously you communicate with other people, is that they don't have much support. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why women get postpartum depression is because they've gone from having this amazing social life to just no one or just their bub, and they're constantly being needed 24/7. They don't know how to handle that. And then not being brave enough to ask for help because they're meant to do it all. They're meant to be like this. Like, and there's the pressure of not just wanting to look good, but you kind of have to have your shit together. And it's like there's so much pressure on mums. It's ridiculous
Mm.
when it should be just love and support
Yeah.
and being like, can I come over and do your dishes? Can I come over and do your fucking laundry? Just want me to come over and just sit with you and just do your thing so you can like just talk. I think a lot of people, they just, new mums just want to feel like people want to be around them.
Mm.
That's all. That was my experience. It's like they just want you to be like it was like the old self, but obviously the
Yeah.
new self, and just being like, can we just like chat and not chat about the baby? Like,
Yeah.
can we just have like a normal conversation like we did before? And I'll just like pretend like well, not pretend, but I'll just nurse my child
Yeah.
while I'm with you.
Yeah.
And they want you to message them. Like if you have a new
Mm.
mum friend, or if you're a new mum and you wanting that connection, you got to ask like, hey, I'm feeling
Mm.
fucking lonely. Can you just call
Mm.
me like on your way to
Mm.
work? Can you please just call me or something like that? Because you have to be your own advocate, but then also if you're a friend that has a new mum, you have to be that advocate for them.
Yeah. Oh man, like just hearing you talk about that, I get like kind of emotional because it's so true, especially if you're someone
Mm.
who, and a lot of listeners are really ambitious, like on
Mhm.
most of the time, then all of a sudden you're like,
Mhm.
all I do, and it's not all you do. It's
Mhm.
just like the whole word just. But I
Mm.
mean, you're
Mm.
looking after a newborn. You have all these other areas of your life that you've taken a back seat. It's really hard adjustment,
Mhm.
and that's
Mhm.
when you need friends and people who just support you more than ever. And then
Yep.
if you feel a bit down, then there's this whole stigma around um, postpartum depression and everything like that. And people are like, oh, it's just the hormones kicking in. It's like, no, it's just a human who wants connection. Like, stop putting fucking labels on it and treating them like, oh,
Yep.
she's just postpartum. Like, she's a fucking human being.
Yep. Like, yeah, if I was to give anyone advice, just message them every day. Be like, hey, just thinking of
Yeah,
you. Or
yeah,
like, what was something exciting that happened today with you and your bub?
yeah,
And they might not get back to you straight away. They will read it. They will read it. They won't get back to you straight away. But they're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. Oh crap, I gotta get to this thing. They'll
yeah,
message you 3 days later. But like,
yeah,
know that those little things will probably mean a lot more than you think.
yeah. And so we're going through all that, and then we want to bounce back. We want our bodies to go back the way they were. It's
Yeah.
like, babe, you've got so much going on. Like, give yourself
Yeah.
some compassion and patience. What would you consider if someone was to go, I've pushed out my baby yesterday. I want to set some
100%.
health and fitness goals. What would you
Mhm.
say are some really healthy postpartum health and fitness goals for the fourth trimester, the 3 months postpartum?
Okay. You got to work on your brain. If I'm honest, you can't
Mm.
like. I don't think we should focus on our body. We need to focus on what's happening up here. And it's like, and write down your new beliefs and your new standards, and you're gonna
Mm.
have new values as well. And then really
Mm.
define like, because you can do a lot. Like you can go for
Mm.
like walks till you can. You can work on like the little muscle groups, the ones that stabilize. By the way, your ass is going to disappear unless you do something about it. So doing like honestly just YouTube Pilates while your
Yeah.
baby's doing stuff like will do it a tenfold. But those first 6 weeks, one you have to now look after something that's living, like
Yeah.
that wants you all of the time, that
Mm.
you can't get space. Like I don't think I formed a connection, like a loving connection with Rose until probably 3 months, because I was like,
Mm.
I can't. This thing, it just wants me for food. Like I don't have a like a I didn't, and I happily admit this. I didn't have that motherly like I loved her, but I wasn't like in love with her
Yep.
until I was able to like separate being needed and then being
Yeah.
loved and being like I that was really that's probably like the hardest thing, as I didn't really have that. And I know Dylan had straight away, but I was like, can you just get the fuck off me?
Yeah.
Like I just want my boobs for a second, or I just want to like just chill for a second. And I find probably that's the hardest part. So I think your biggest goal is to redefine who you are. If I
Mm.
was to look back, it would be to redefine my new person, and like because it will still take you a long time and things will change, but it's to feel like, okay, what are
Mm.
your new standards? What are your new values? And then okay,
Mm.
how does health and training and fitness fit into that? Because if you set expectations for 3 days a week or wanting to get your body back, but your values are wanting to look after your bub, those two things conflict to an extent, because your bub's
Mm.
going to need you a lot more than you think you do. And then obviously when you
Mm.
are away from bub, you're going to be like, oh my God, is she okay? What's happening? Is like, when you're away, you just think about them the whole time. And then it's because if you don't work on yourself in those first 6 months, it's not gonna be the best. You're not gonna be your best. And I think putting off expectations of bouncing back, I still think you should look after yourself. I still
Yes.
think you should have a goddamn shower every day. Order Uber Eats, not Uber Eats. What is it? You Foods. By the way,
Yeah.
if you're telling yourself you can't shower,
Oh,
get a pram, put the pram in the bathroom. It's gonna cry. It's fine. Have a goddamn shower.
I put
Like,
my bouncer at my bathroom door today.
100%. There is no, and I'll be upfront. There is no excuse to not have a shower
Yeah.
because I know it's gonna make you feel like the transformation a shower does on your postpartum is
Yeah.
crazy. But prepare yourself. Like, take away things that you don't need. So I had you foods on repeat for the first 3 months because I didn't want to cook a meal. And if I did, I would order I would make big batches of meals, and I would make things as easy as possible so that I wouldn't get so frustrated I couldn't make a meal, or I couldn't do this, or I couldn't have a meal because I couldn't prepare it. No, look after your health, which is food, the things you can control, which is your food, your hygiene, and then those little movements, the ab stuff, the glute stuff, the things that are going to help prepare the body for more load later on, and then work on what's happening up here. And I found journaling, either through talking out loud or writing it down, just a question every day, and be honest. Like, if you fucking hate it, if you are like despising, like, put it out there. Don't judge yourself. Just express it, because if you keep it in, that's what creates the postpartum depression, is when you keep shit in. Acknowledge that it's a shit goddamn time and ask for help. Because if you don't, like, it's gonna be more of a terrible time, and to acknowledge that, like, you can't do it all. Well, not at least all at once.
Yeah.
And then having the expectations that, and if you are, you're banging, you had a really good birth, you had all these things, which rarely happens, and you do want to, then just be informed. Go and find an actual postpartum certified coach, or at least someone who has worked with a lot of postpartum women, and get informed. Know what you should and what you shouldn't do, and your body best. You know that if it doesn't feel good, it's probably not the right thing to do. And that's, I guess, would be my beginning of it.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing your experience postpartum as well. I mean, that first 3 months where it took you that period of time to form a connection with Rose too, because I've actually heard similar from a lot of friends, and it's not often talked about. It's okay if you're not like, the baby lands on your chest and you're not like, oh my God, love at first sight. You're like, I gave birth to a human. What the fuck is all of this? Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's totally okay. And you're not a bad mum. Like, it's,
100%. And if you're an already independent person like I was, well, I still am. I'm not going to say that I'm still not. And then this thing is now leeching everything from you. Like, you love it to bits. Like, you would literally die for the thing, but you're also like, I don't know how to feel about you right now. Like, I love you, but I'm also like, I don't have this love, this aura around you that, like, and I didn't have it for really long. And I guess then that can, and I didn't judge myself for it. I'm like, I'll just, it is what it is. She's here now. I can't do anything else about it. But I guess having the pressure of, and I think a lot of women then, because they don't form that connection, I'm a terrible mom, I don't love my child. It's like, just time.
chill.
Once again, patience. And then if it's 6 months and we still aren't, then we'll actually probably earlier than that, if you really feel that things aren't right, like, truly feel, you have to go and talk to someone. Don't delay it. There are so many free things now. Like, you can go to the GP. Like, and I was so thankful for my GP. The first thing she asked, are you okay? Or how are you? Or is everything fine? That was the first thing out of her mouth. And then she asked about contraception, which I won't go into. But the first thing was, are you okay? And I love that, because that was the opening to feel like, okay, do you need to speak to someone about, any odd thoughts or things that might not be the way that it should be? And I think, if I'm honest, you need to be very open in that first 3 months about what's going on, because it's going to affect you more for a longer period of time, more than anything else. And you're going to do things you're going to regret. You're going to say things you're going to regret, which then enhance, like, a snowball effect. Thankfully, I didn't have that. Like, I'll be like, I probably, for me, more of the postpartum depression was I couldn't run the business the way that I wanted to, and I didn't want to have to pivot or give up running the business. And I think that was probably the hardest thing for me, is like that I had to change that part of me of being like this go-getter, this doer, to now not doing that. And now I have to succumb to the child, because you have to now be there for them, and not just you doing you, and then you get shitty with your partner because they can still do all the things that they want, and then that forms this downward spiral because you're getting annoyed at them because nothing's changed for them and everything's changed for you. But unfortunately, that's reality. Like,
Yeah.
we can't change that. Like, unless your man decides to be the motherly person, you can't change that. And it took me too long to realize I was hating on Dylan because I was so jealous of his still freedom and him not having to be the one that is, having to feed all the time, because I chose to, as much as I could, to breastfeed. We still had to do the mixed feeding.
Yeah.
But the jealousy was like massive. And particularly because I'm such an independent person, I was like, I hate you. It's like, just go away. But I love you.
Amen.
And I'm like, it's just, and I guess that's another thing probably not people don't talk about, but and that affects probably more than we want to admit postpartum. And then I think only this last 6 months I've been like, this is Jess. She's back. And not well, in terms of back, has been like, I can now function and be there and be present and not have this jealousy, even though it's sort of still there, but like not be so like anxious about things. It's like, okay, we're all good. Like, we're sweet.
It sounds like almost instead of bouncing back, there's almost been like a reconnection with your soul. Like you reconnect, because when you go, I just feel like myself, like you know when you feel like yourself and when you don't. And that's why I think where people go,
and
I want to bounce back.
3 months postpartum?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're obviously going through all these. Well, I shouldn't put that. I shouldn't put that upon you.
I know. I'm sitting here nodding at all the things, like the jealousy, the resentment. Like there was a meme that got sent to me from one of my other friends that was like, how to be fit with a newborn, be the dad. And I like lost it, and it was like, all due respect, because I was just like, it's so true.
And then I guess from that, the bouncing back thing, then we get frustrated. Is like we don't probably share what we're thinking with our partner in a way that's not an attack. Like what I learned recently is like men don't like to be criticized, controlled, or closed off. And when we're crazy psycho bitches with hormones going crazy, we're all of those things. We want to criticize them because we want to control them, do the goddamn dishes, and then we don't want them to go anywhere. It's like, no. If I'm in this, you're in this. And then that really affects them, because then you've just attacked their values, but we don't know what to do. So I think if you have to be, unfortunately, extremely vulnerable with your feelings to them, and not in a way that's attacking. If I give any advice from moving forward, it's like not an attack. It's like, can I just give you some feedback on how I'm feeling right now? Or can I just give you some feedback on what you've just done and how that's affecting me right now? Because they probably don't know either.
It's so true. It's so true. Like my husband is working full-time contractor life, so didn't get any parental leave or anything. So he was in between contracts maybe about a month ago. And I went out and searched for the book Nonviolent Communication, because I'm like, buckle up. I'm going to get triggered the fuck out of here. Like, how can I make sure that we're okay? And so if you don't know how to give feedback or have conversations in a way that doesn't feel like you're attacking your partner, get this fucking book. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
100%. Like, well, I know so many friends that they've had breakdown in relationships 1 to 2 years postpartum. 1, because they probably didn't communicate their issues before being pregnant, but 2, because everything's heightened, emotions are heightened. That level of communication is diminished, and obviously they have to come to the table too. Like, they have to understand that what you're going through is completely not normal. Well, it is normal, but like it's a blip in the grand scheme of life. And knowing, okay, how does she like to be communicated to? Like, okay, did you know that I value all of these things, and when you do these things, they make me feel X, Y, and Z, and when you do these things, they make me feel X, Y, and Z. And it's that marrying of 2 completely different humans, and like, how do we communicate effectively without it being an attack. And I'm only starting to do this now. Like, by the way, it's only because they come to realize I should have read that book obviously a long time ago. But if you know that they're your human, and like you know that this is like, because obviously we get into situations that are not obviously ideal, but if and you're getting really fucked off and they're not like who they used to be, it's because
Yeah.
it's a conversation you have to have with each other. Like you can't just
Mm.
expect things to be the way that they were, because your feelings are different, your values are different, and there's will have changed, but might not have changed, and they might need more help to understand you more. So you have to help them understand you more.
Yeah. And that's a really good perspective too. And I'm mindful I've kind of tangented the conversation here, but it's like you're in a relationship, so not much might have changed for them, like their world, for example, but you have changed so much. So how
Mhm.
they see you is changed. Like you're no longer the
Mhm.
person that was,
Mhm.
the Jess before you had a
Mhm.
Rose.
Mhm.
So it's like
Mhm.
it's an adjustment for them whether they admit it or not, but you're not the same person. You're not having the same
No,
conversations. You're not spending the
100%.
same time together and everything. So it is harder for them. They just might not admit it
And you're
or
not gonna
show
be as
it.
fun
Yeah.
and you may not be as fun and playful as you were
I'm
because you
definitely
don't.
not as fun at the moment.
Yeah. And, like, but that's okay though.
Yeah.
Like, but you have to acknowledge that and be like, "I'm not," but then sometimes when you acknowledge that, you're like, "Okay, I was, and I liked being that type of person.
Yeah.
So how
So
how
I'll
do I
do
bring
more.
that back?" Like, yeah,
Yeah.
what and it sometimes you have to make it, like, written somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
I've got 2 new things which I hung them up and they've just both crashed and glass has gone everywhere, which is annoying, but it's like how I communicate and have value and how he communicates and value. And each time that we do something that we feel has attacked us, it's like, I don't feel seen right now. And then he'll say, I feel criticized right now. And then I
Amazing.
know what he's getting to. And I'm like,
Amazing.
all right, you're right, but okay, I
Oh,
apologize. Um, but that's taken us, well, a 3-day workshop to sort of understand.
yeah.
But communication is an untapped tool, particularly postpartum, with yourself and then obviously with
Yeah.
your family and your partners around you.
Yeah. I feel like I keep talking to you for hours about postpartum life, but I'm mindful of your time. And so I would love to hear what is a really actionable step that a listener who is about to have their child or is newly postpartum and are figuring out like what the fuck does health and fitness look like for me from here?
Mhm,
What's a
mhm,
really actionable step they can do in the next 24 to 48
mhm,
hours
mhm,
to
mm.
just create that for
Okay.
them?
I It's good to have a plan before you have the baby, but you don't know what's gonna happen postpartum.
Mm.
So I think it's fantastic. This is going to be your plan, but also know it might not happen. You might have to have a cesarean, and you're screwed for 6 weeks, or if not longer. Like if something or some other adversity happens, or if you have to have an episiotomy, and then you're out for like 8 to 10 weeks. So I think if you haven't had your baby yet, plan for ideal situations, but then
Mhm.
also if I have to have emergency cesarean, this is what I'm going to do. If I have to have an episiotomy, this is what I'm going to have to do. So have all of the
Mhm.
options laid out if you really are very conscious of your next steps postpartum. If you don't care and you worry about it later, then fine. But I would say have multiple, so then you don't get disheartened when something doesn't go the way that
Yeah.
it does, because you don't know how
Be
things are going to plan
informed.
out. And if you're like 6 weeks, and regardless of how you've birthed your child, if you're 6 weeks and you do want to start, then I would definitely you have to go and speak to someone who is qualified in that area. So there's a company run by Jen Dogger. It's Mums Safe, or
Mhm.
Return to Safe Exercise, or at least either have a conversation with one of those clients, or go and find a reputable postpartum coach. And I mean reputable, I mean like women that has
Mhm.
testimonials, that has had clients, and not just one or two, an accumulation of them. Um, like and I guess because they're going to be the best informed. They're not going to know you
Yeah.
perfectly. You're going to know yourself perfectly, but just get that information. And then if you're a gym goer, walk into the gym and just do what feels good.
Mhm.
Go and give yourself 45 minutes and just do whatever it is that makes you feel like a fresh lady again.
get a fucking bicep pump, do some Bulgarian split squats and really feel
Exactly.
the burn. Like just, do it.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not
Yeah.
split squats in
Probably
the
not
first moment, but you know what I
Bulgarian.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, you know what I mean. But yeah, it sounds like as well, I mean, PSA, like if you're waiting for the doctor's checkup to get the all clear to return to exercise, you're not going to get it. They're literally going to ask you, what's your contraception? So
But
doctors won't do it.
that's not
Go
their
see
job.
someone.
Like,
Exactly. So
the
go see
doctor's job.
someone whose it is.
Yeah. So yeah, your pelvic health physio, they'll know a lot. Go and see one that actually probably practices in exercise as well. That would be my recommendations. But you don't expect your doctor to give you training advice, because that's not their job. Their
Yep,
job
100%.
is to identify disease or not, and to help you understand what could be going wrong, like from a physiological perspective. So definitely different roles, and don't get up your physician or your physician for saying you're in the all clear, because they're just looking at you from the outside rather than from the inside out.
And so just clearly you know your shit when it comes to postpartum, but you also know your shit when it comes to like health and fitness in general. So if someone's like, Jess is my girl, I need to be coached by her, where can they learn more about you and the work that you do?
So probably just Instagram. So I've got 2 profiles, but I've just started using one more than the other because the old one was built on the sexy Jess, the what is it? The comp Jess, like the fitness comp Jess. So that was, and I've transitioned to be, I'm not just about, half naked photos on the internet. But it's at jess.limitless on Instagram. That would be the best one.
Amazing. I'll put that in the show notes. But thank you so much, Jess, for your time today. I've had such a fun time having a chat with you. Thank you for sharing your experience and wisdom. Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Oh, thank you again.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope this was helpful. If you thought of someone while listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could share this episode with them. While you're doing that, please also take a moment to leave a review on the podcast if you haven't yet already. It takes less than a minute and it means so much to me and helps this podcast to reach more people just like you. Thank you so much for that, and I'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and achieve every dream you have, because actually, you can.